everyone. My name is Dr. Janani Krishnaswamy, and I'm here to answer your questions about being a doctor. You all sent in so many great questions about what it takes to work in this field, and I'm excited to answer some of these questions for you. So let's get started. What aspects of practicing medicine do you find the most challenging and why? This is a great question. A lot of people, especially high school students I've worked with, are really enamored with medicine because they think we walk in, wave a magic wand, and everybody gets better, and we're curing disease, and we're saving people's lives every day. And that can all be true in that we do get to help people get better, and we do get to save lives sometimes. But it's very important to understand that medicine isn't always this glorious thing where all our patients are singing our praises and we feel so great about ourselves every single day. In fact, the hardest thing about medicine is how often we don't know the answer. And that comes up a lot. Even for things we think are true and the things we learn in school, there are situations where patients are just different and everyone's an individual. The hardest thing is reckoning with that sense of, I really don't know what the best thing is. All I can do is be honest with the patient and try to understand what their values and preferences are and work on a treatment plan together. It can also be really difficult because our profession says first do no harm. And so sometimes we really don't know what's harmful. We see that everything can have some harms and can have some benefits. So a lot of decision making in medicine is weighing the risks as well as the benefits. And a lot of times it's a judgment call based on our experience, knowledge, research, and in one sense, our gut feeling. So we have to be very honest with patients and we have to be very comfortable with a degree of uncertainty. Did perfectionism and competition ever eat away at you? This is a really great question. People that want to become doctors and physicians themselves and medical students have a really common theme in that they tend to be very perfectionistic. They're very high achievers. They're really conscientious. A lot of them have a really strong desire to do good in the world, to make a difference, really idealistic, right? So these are characteristic traits that make good doctors, but they can also be sometimes our worst enemies. Because if those ingredients are combined with a little bit of impatience and self-judgment, the fact of the matter is you are gonna make mistakes. Doctors do make mistakes, and not only when they're practicing medicine, even in medical school. These are all very, very common things. The other aspect of it is that there are always gonna be people that seem to have their act together way more than you, and that's also really normal. Even the most successful physicians often talk about this tendency to compare. Even when they're really successful objectively, there is still that attitude and tendency when you're perfectionistic to judge yourself against others. And it absolutely happened to me as well. And it can be a really tough place because not only does it feel bad when you haven't achieved what you think your standard is, but also it seems that other people seem to have it easy and they are, achieving that really easily. And then you feel really alone and isolated. So those are all ingredients of the perfect storm where it can quickly lead to depression, burnout, self-harm, and all of these things. So it's very, very important. A thing I learned was to be very aware of what was happening in my brain. And it sounds really basic, but just awareness and just curiosity about what's going on in the brain can help sort of double check what's going on, question the validity and the truth of what my brain is saying, because you don't have to believe all of the thoughts in your head. Not every thought is true. So once you become aware and you can recognize that judgy, small voice that wants to bring you down versus the voice that wants to lift you up and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Look at what you've accomplished already. It's already tough to get where you are right now, to have an ambition, to even want to be a doctor. So it's very important to understand the voices in your head and go with the voices that are more uplifting, because that's always going to take you down a much better path. If you could say one thing to your younger self, what would it be? So I think that if I were to say one thing to my younger self, it would be to never stop losing that fun and spirited attitude about the things that I did. So when you get into this field of being a doctor, going into med school, your life can seem to be overtaken, with studying and work. And it just seems like the most important thing in the world to be able to memorize this material, do well on your tests, do well on your step exams. Everything is just like, it just seems like there's a bunch of stepping stones and all we can focus on is getting from one stepping stone to the next stepping stone. In the process, if you're not careful, you can lose your attitude of fun and joy and playfulness that is so important. If you look at a child, they're full of everything they do is fun because that's how they see the world. Even if it's, something that's like a rock on the floor, it can be exciting to them. And in the process of studying may not necessarily be enjoyable, there is a fascination to what we're learning that if you keep recognizing that, it can make it more enjoyable. Learning about the kidney may be really, really difficult, but if you really take the big picture, it's a fascinating organ. I mean, the way it's structured, the intricacies of how it works day in and day out to, filter all the fluid that you're consuming, it can have this element of awe and fascination. So that's one aspect. Finding the joy and the inspiration in everything you're doing is gonna make that more enjoyable. But the other aspect, and something I would have told myself, is don't forget the hobbies and the passions apart from medicine that make you who you are. Because one day, you're gonna be a doctor and you're still gonna have to be a person. And being a doctor is not gonna be your only identity. You have to figure that part out. That's all the time we have for questions. I hope this was helpful. Everybody at UWorld wishes you all the best in your future careers and good luck.